Marissa Caldwell was 23 years old when she learned that some people will look straight at you and see nothing worth keeping. She was an intern at a mid-sized law firm in the city, the kind of place where the carpets were dark green, the coffee was always slightly burnt, and the senior associates wore their confidence like a second suit. She had worked hard to get there. Harder than most people knew. She had grown up in a modest house on the edge of a small town where college was something people talked about more than they did, and law school was practically a foreign concept. But Marissa had always been the kind of person who listened carefully, remembered everything, and asked questions long after everyone else had moved on. She had been dating Daniel Holt for almost 2 years when everything changed. Daniel was a senior associate at the same firm. He was 35, well-dressed, and had the easy, practiced manner of someone who had always been the smartest person in most rooms he had entered. He was charming in the way that certain men are charming, smoothly, selectively, and always just enough to keep you grateful. He had noticed Marissa during her first week, had started talking to her near the coffee machine, and by the third week, he had asked her to dinner. She had been flattered. She would admit that honestly, even years later. He was experienced and established, and she was still finding her footing. He seemed to know exactly how everything worked, the law, the firm, the city, the world. She had thought, in the way that young people sometimes think, that loving someone like that meant she was on the right path. But love, she would later understand, is not the same thing as safety. And admiration is not the same thing as respect. The small signs were always there. Daniel had a habit of adjusting her opinions at dinner parties, not arguing with her, but smoothing over what she said, adding a correction, finishing her sentence in a slightly different direction. He introduced her to his colleagues as one of our interns, even when they had been together for over a year. At firm events, he would place his hand on her back and then drift toward more senior people, leaving her standing near the edge of the room with a glass of water and a smile that she held in place through sheer will. Once, when she mentioned that she was thinking about applying to law school after her internship ended, he had looked at her with something that was almost kind. "It's a real commitment," he had said. "Years of your life, a lot of money. You have to be honest with yourself about whether you have what it takes for the long game. Not everyone does." She had nodded. She had even thanked him for being honest. She did not sleep well that night, but she told herself it was because of stress. The breakup came without much warning, which was, in its own way, the most honest thing Daniel ever did. It was a Tuesday in October, and the city outside was doing what cities do in October, the light going gold and the air going sharp. He sat across from her at the small table near the window in her apartment and told her, in a measured and reasonable voice, that he thought they wanted different things. He said she was still in a phase of figuring herself out. He said he was at a place in his life where he needed someone more established, more certain of her direction. He said he cared about her, which is a thing people say when they're leaving and want to feel good about how they're doing it. Marissa listened to all of it. She did not cry. She did not raise her voice. When he finished, she told him that she understood, and she walked him to the door, and she closed it quietly behind him. Then she sat down on the floor with her back against the door, in the dark, and she let herself feel every single thing she was feeling, the embarrassment, the sadness, the anger that was only just starting to wake up underneath all the rest of it. She stayed there for a long time. She gave herself that. But when she got up with something that had not been there before. She opened her laptop that night and pulled up the application page for law school. She had looked at it before, then closed it. This time she did not close it. She read every requirement, every deadline, every detail. Then she started writing. The next 18 months were not romantic or easy. There was nothing cinematic about studying for the LSAT after a full day of work, or eating rice and vegetables 4 nights a week to save money, or sitting alone in the campus library on weekends while everyone else seemed to be living a larger, louder life. She was rejected by 2 schools before she was accepted. When she got in, the scholarship she received covered part of the tuition. She picked up work at a legal aid clinic to cover the rest, helping people who could not afford lawyers navigate a system that had been built, in many ways, to be difficult to navigate without one. That work shaped her more than any class ever could. She sat across from people who were fighting for their businesses, their wages, their basic rights, and who had no idea where to start. She saw how the law could protect people who knew how to use it, and how easily it could crush people who did not. She learned to translate complicated language into plain words. She learned to listen in a way that made people feel heard, which is different from simply being quiet while someone else speaks. She was not the loudest student in her class. She was not the most confident in the first year, when confidence felt like something other people had been issued and she had somehow missed. But she was thorough. She was patient. And she had a quality that her professors noticed and tried, carefully, to name, a kind of calm under pressure that did not come from having nothing to lose, but from having already lost something and survived it. She graduated near the top of her class. A federal judge selected her for a clerkship, which is one of the more competitive positions a new lawyer can receive, and she spent a year working in that judge's chambers, reading briefs and watching how decisions are made at the highest levels. She learned that the law is not always about who is right. It is about who prepares, who argues clearly, and who does not fold under pressure. After the clerkship, she joined a litigation firm, a small but well-regarded practice that specialized in commercial disputes, which are legal battles between companies or business partners that often involve large amounts of money and complex paper trails. It was not glamorous work in the way that television makes law look glamorous. It was detailed, careful, sometimes slow work. But Marissa was good at it, and she grew to love it. Her colleagues described her, when they described her at all, as someone who was easy to underestimate until you were on the other side of the courtroom from her. She did not think about Daniel Holt very often during those years. When she did, she noticed that the feeling had changed. The embarrassment was long gone. The sadness had faded. What remained was something quieter and harder to name, a kind of understanding that his dismissal of her had been, in its own strange way, useful. Not because he had been right, but because his certainty that she would not make it had lit something in her that softer treatment might never have reached. She did not wish him badly. She simply did not think about him much at all. That changed on a Wednesday morning in the spring of 2022. Marissa was at her desk, reviewing documents for a case her firm had recently taken on. The case involved a construction company, a family-owned business that had been contracted to complete a large development project on the edge of the city. According to her client, the developer had withheld payments, changed the terms without proper notice, and then used the resulting delays as a reason to threaten legal action against the construction company. Her client was not a large business. They were a family. They had put years of work into the project and were now being told they owed money instead of being owed it. She had taken the case because she believed in it. Her paralegal came in that morning with a folder. The opposing side had filed their formal documents with the court, which included the name and information of their legal representative. Marissa looked at the signature at the bottom of the page. Daniel J. Holt. She read it twice. Then she set the folder down, picked up her coffee, and took a slow sip. "Okay," she said. "Let's pull everything." She told herself, and meant it, that the personal history was irrelevant. Her client needed her focused and fully prepared. Whatever she had felt standing in that apartment doorway 7 years ago had nothing to do with the family sitting across from her in her conference room, whose business and livelihood were at stake. So she worked. She built the case from the beginning, document by document. She read every contract, every email chain, every payment record. She found the places where the developer's story did not match the timeline. She found the communications where payment had been promised, then delayed, then quietly dropped without explanation. She prepared her client carefully, not just for what would be asked, but for how it would feel to sit in a courtroom and be questioned by someone whose job was to make them look unreliable. She also prepared herself. She knew how Daniel worked. She had watched him, years ago, in meetings and depositions. He was good at appearing calm while creating pressure. He was skilled at making complicated situations seem simple when simplicity served him, and making simple situations seem complicated when complexity served him. He was the kind of lawyer who made the other side doubt themselves. She did not intend to doubt herself. They met first in mediation, a process where both sides sit together with a neutral person and try to reach an agreement before going to court. It was a Tuesday morning, and the conference room was beige and quiet. Marissa arrived early. She arranged her folders, poured a glass of water, and sat down. When Daniel walked in, he did not immediately recognize her. She saw the moment he did. It was subtle, a very small shift in his posture, a slight pause in his step. He covered it immediately with a smooth smile and an extended hand. "Marissa," he said. "It's been a long time." "It has," she said. She shook his hand once. Should we get started? Mediation did not produce a settlement. Daniel's client was not interested in settling on terms that were fair to her client, and Marissa was not interested in settling on terms that were not. They were going to court. In the weeks that followed, they exchanged legal filings back and forth. Daniel was, as she had expected, thorough and strategic. He filed motions designed to limit what her client could present in court. He pushed on technicalities. He was trying to shrink the case, to make it smaller and more manageable for his side. Marissa answered every motion carefully. She did not get frustrated. Frustration, she had learned, is a luxury in litigation. Instead, she found the weakness in each argument and addressed it directly, and then she built her own case stronger around it. The hearing lasted 2 days. On the first morning, Daniel made his opening. He was polished, as always. He stood at the front of the courtroom with the ease of someone who had done this many times, and he told a clean, simple story: a contractor who had not delivered, a developer who had tried to be patient, a legal dispute that was really just a matter of a job not done correctly. He was convincing. She gave him that. When it was her turn, Marissa stood up quietly. She did not perform. She did not try to match his tone or his style. She simply started talking, and what she said was precise and clear and grounded in the documents she had spent months reviewing. She laid out the timeline from the beginning: the original contract, the agreed payment schedule, the emails where her client had completed each phase of the work and submitted for payment, and the responses that delayed, questioned, and eventually stopped coming. She talked about the specific dates on which payments had been due and the specific dates on which they had not arrived. She showed where the developer had changed certain requirements mid-project without issuing a formal change order, which was required under the contract, and then used those changes as a reason to claim the work was not completed correctly. She did not raise her voice once. She did not need to. The documents did the work. On the second afternoon, after testimony and cross-examination and closing arguments, the judge took a short recess. When she returned, she ruled in favor of Marissa's client on the primary claims. It was not a dramatic moment. There was no applause in a real courtroom. The judge read her ruling in a steady, professional voice. Marissa's client, sitting beside her, put a hand over his mouth. His wife, seated in the row behind them, was very still. Marissa placed her hand briefly on her client's arm. "We got it," she said quietly. Outside in the corridor afterward, Daniel approached her. He was composed, which was what she had expected. He congratulated her on the result. He said it with the careful, slightly stiff tone of someone who is doing the right thing and is aware that they are doing it. She thanked him. Briefly, professionally. He said something about the case being a close one, about how the judge could have gone either way. She nodded once. She did not agree or disagree. He left, and she watched him go, and she felt nothing dramatic. No surge of triumph, no desire to say all the things she had never said. Just a kind of quiet, settled clarity, the way you feel when something that has been slightly out of place for a long time finally sits correctly. She called her client from the parking lot. He answered immediately, and when she confirmed the news, she heard him exhale, a long, slow breath that sounded like something being put down after years of being carried. She drove home through the city, through the ordinary early evening traffic, and she thought about the girl who had sat on the floor of her apartment in the dark with her back against a closed door. She thought about what that girl had not known yet, what was waiting for her on the other side of that night, and the night after that, and the years of quiet, unglamorous work that would follow. She thought about how nobody tells you, when something ends, that the ending is sometimes the most important thing that could have happened to you. She did not think about Daniel Holt again for a very long time. She got home, changed her clothes, made dinner, and sat at her kitchen table with a folder of notes for her next case. It was waiting. There was always something waiting. She opened the folder and started to read.